Hello, welcome back to TCOMM Monday. My name is Dr. Nicola Felton, and I am the author of The Color of Me movement. The Color of Me movement itself is a series of books that helps parents and caregivers and mental health providers work with children who have behavioral and emotional disorders. It consists of a guidebook and a series of workbooks and journals. We're going to be talking about next week the two new guidebooks, workbooks, and journals that's going to be coming out next month. But today I want to talk about three very important things about our children and what we kind of go through and experience when they're having acting out behavior. One of the most important things that we need to do in trying to determine how we can help our children when they're having negative and acting out behaviors is trying to assess where the behaviors are coming from. We want to be able to understand them so that we can provide as much assistance to our children as possible. So the first thing we have to do is determine whether or not the children, our children, are displaying what we call learned behavior. Learned behavior is behavior that is observed by a child, and it can also be behavior that they've heard. Kids kind of can imagine what's going on or how someone may be expressing themselves if they overhear arguments or fights and so forth. But commonly, it's behavior that they've actually literally observed. The behaviors could occur at school. Someone could be acting out in school or displaying a behavior when kids are in that observational phase of being maybe 3, 4, 5 years old, maybe preschool, kindergarten, and they are watching the kids respond a certain way to teachers and so forth, or they're watching teachers respond a certain way to children and other adults as well. And they learn how to share their emotions and their feelings through expressing their behaviors in this manner. Sometimes when children are also that young still, and they're growing and kind of developing their own personality and their own sense of self, they can watch how their children, other children and their siblings are displaying behaviors and responses to certain situations, and they're learning how to express their feelings and emotions the same way. Sometimes children can observe adults communicating with each other. Kids learn how to argue, they learn how to fight, they learn how to talk back, they learn how to be sarcastic, and they may not actually understand the impact that their behavior or their responses to certain situations impact others. And they may not actually be distressed during the time that they're displaying negative behavior, but this is what they've learned. And so this is an opportunity, that is an opportunity to sit down and take it as an opportunity to teach and talk to our children, share your thoughts about what they are saying and what they're doing and how it may or may not impact others, or how some others may or may not understand what they're trying to say, or how when they're expressing themselves, and teach them a better way to share their feelings or get their needs met. So each one of the levels that we talk about today, different types of behaviors and how they manifest themselves, can be used as an opportunity for us to sit down and talk to our children and teach them. So learned behavior, that's a very big deal, because we often don't know where different types of learned behaviors come from. And sometimes we see maybe teenagers and they have younger siblings, and the younger siblings are acting out behaviors that they've actually observed by older siblings. And oftentimes when we're teaching older kids, we're saying, you don't want to display a certain type of behavior, or you don't want to have a particular response to a situation, especially in front of your young sibling, because you don't want them displaying that behavior that they really don't understand. and could possibly get them into a situation that they really don't need to be in. So very, very important to be able to determine whether or not it is learned behavior. If you have any questions or concerns about whether or not it's a possibility this could be learned behavior, it's important to be able to talk to a professional, to be able to share any information that you've journaled in your Color of Me movement journal or your workbook for behavior. Maybe another sibling is displayed, to see if your a younger sibling is picking up on that. Also, learned behavior could be displayed by children who perhaps they are observing other children being bullied at school, perhaps they themselves are being bullied at school, and they're not really understanding how to express how they feel, perhaps being overwhelmed. And then they pick that up, learning how someone else has expressed their feelings or responded to a situation that was negative for them. So it's important to be able to gather as much information as you possibly can about what your child is experiencing and how they are responding to certain situations, how often, when something may or may not be happening, something that may be triggering them. So it's very, very important to be as observant as you possibly can. The other type, well, not type of behavior, but format in which a child is expressing their behavior and where that behavior comes from. And we're specifically talking about negative behaviors. And in this instance, is that it's a possibility that your child could have a behavior disorder. If your child seems to be distressed, they're going through a situation that perhaps their behaviors or their emotions does not actually match up with the situation. It may be that they're either less emotional than you may feel they need to be, or they're much more overly emotional than you feel they need to be. Either way, it's the same opportunity, teaching opportunity. You start with journaling and you write down what's going on, what may be triggering the child, what types of situations are happening around them, and be able to take that information into a treatment professional and share it and get questions answered that you may need answered, and get feedback from them as to whether or not your child needs to be in for an assessment in order to get a behavior diagnosis. And sometimes we may actually have a behavior disorder diagnosis for our children, but perhaps they're displaying different behaviors than they have displayed in the past, and it may mean that it's time for a reassessment to really be able to look at the situation again to see if there's something else going on with the child. And sometimes too, children can have and be diagnosed with behavior disorders, and then they have something else come up because they're actually have some type of learned behaviors. They're learning how to respond to different situations. I know some situations have occurred if we had a child who was diagnosed with behavior disorder, and then they were in perhaps a treatment facility, and then they picked up additional negative behaviors there that were not associated with their behavior disorder. So that is also another opportunity to be able to look at and see that, is this part of my child behavior disorder, or is this some learned behavior that my child picked up and then not actually able to discern what is and what is not appropriate in certain situations. So, and the third type of acting out behavior that parents struggle with, it's extremely difficult to try to determine why our children, may have a negative behavior, but sometimes it is very possible that our children are simply being disrespectful. And it's important to be able to rule out learned behavior, to rule out behavior disorders, and determine whether or not our child is just being disrespectful. Now, the information about being disrespectful is twofold. One is, it's a strong possibility that, the fact that there may not be any learned behavior there may not be a diagnosable behavior disorder and our children are being disrespectful, it's a possibility, very, very likely, that they're experiencing something that's overwhelming to them, that is causing anxiety, and they don't know how to ask for help. They don't know how to reach out and say, I'm struggling, I'm going through something, mom or dad, can you help me? And if they don't know how to do that, there is a possibility that they just, can be very disrespectful in their responses to us because they are confused and they're overwhelmed. So it's still a good opportunity to be able to sit down and to talk to our children and work with them and try to teach them the best way to respond in situations that are overwhelming and anxiety driven to them. So even if you determine that your child is simply being disrespectful, it still is a cause to be able to write down in a journal what you are experiencing, what you have witnessed, so you can help them find a way to determine, why they have that negative behavior. So in some instances, we may have teenagers, preteens who are going through emotional struggles because they've had a loss. Either their friend moved away or it was a significant loss, and their children did not know how to handle that situation. And so in those cases, they may lash out, they may talk back, they may be disrespectful. And so we have to be mindful of what our children are going through, what their struggles are, and what they're dealing with, so that we can help them through that. So remember, those three is determining where the behavior is coming from. Is it a learned behavior? Is it diagnosable behavior disorders, in which you would definitely need a professional to be able to talk to you about that and determine whether or not your child needs to be assessed, or is your child simply being disrespectful? And at that time, that's when we go and we actually assess the situation ourselves to determine what it is that our child may need to whatever they're struggling with. So very, very important things for us to know about what's going on with our child. And so TCOMM Monday comes to you with being able to open up some ideas and some thoughts that some of my clients have shared with me that they're interested in knowing more about. I also want to hear from you. I want to know what you want to know more about. So you can email me at nlhcw1@outlook.com, or you can just send me a message, drop it at the bottom of this video after you like, share, and follow. Or you can go to my Facebook page, The Color of Me Movement, or you can go to the website, thecolorofmemovement.com. You can find me by simply Googling my name. If you have a question or a topic that you would like to know more about and you want to get additional information on it, or you just want me to talk about it a little bit more, kind of just, open the doors for you, feel free to drop me a message and let me know. Thank you so much for being with me today. I look forward to speaking with you again next week, and hopefully I get some great ideas. Thank you. See you next week.